Now, just raise your hand. You can do that virtually, and I think you can actually do it like this if you've got it all set up. There you go. And we'll have a look and see who wants to share. And just be aware I'm actually running off two screens, so if I don't get you straight away, just make sure you keep your hand up, and I'll come back to you. Jeepers creepers, you're like a bunch of Anglicans, like sitting there. I know that my father was an Anglican priest. Matt, please, by all
Evening.
means, take Donald as his name from now on whenever you speak to him.
Well, funny you should say that because Donald is my influence for getting on this journey. Him and I have spoken at length for many, many hours about lots of things. Most I'll probably go straight over the top of my head, but a lot of sunk in. And between you and James, what you've been doing, it's something's really resonated inside me that there is a possibility there that something can be actually done to help people rather than just the virtual signaling that I see consistently throughout different charities and stuff like that. So I'm sort of sick of hearing a mate just killed himself and all that sort of stuff so regularly over the past 2 and 3 years. And there doesn't seem all this money's going into places, but nothing seems to be changing. Like these people who are taking their lives are 100% aware of what's out there and what can be done and call out for help because they got best mates and they've got friends who are right next to them who are brokenhearted, wondering why they're taking their lives for those reasons when it's so in our face every day, every month, all that sort of stuff. So I would love to be a part of a journey or a community that can take it to a next level. That's me.
Brother, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. You raised some big ticket items up the front there too. I like that. Go straight to the bull of the gate. No mucking around. Those who don't know me and have seen my videos, you probably figured out I'm barely similar. Okay, next. Who would like to share? Teresa.
Hi. Well, I'm on a progress committee for a community, and we've got some things happening. And basically, I'm on here to see how I can unite my community, but the old ways aren't working. So I'm looking for something new that will bring us together instead of divide us, especially with some certain projects in the air around here, our community. Yeah, so I'm looking for new perspectives and new ways to empower each individual person, but unite us as one.
That is a stellar objective. Well, let's there's a lot of stuff to do tonight to actually get you there. But I'm damn sure if you'll get quite a long way down that path and take away some cherubs. That's the whole point of tonight. And that's not just going to be from me because, as I mentioned in the email, there's going to be a bit of grouping up. Like I'm going to go into breakout rooms later on and discuss some things so that we don't just do it in a big forum. We do it in more tight knit groups. So, and then we'll probably share them around if we've got enough time as well. But thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm damn sure you won't be on your Pat Malone about that one. Thanks, Teresa. Someone else, Sarah.
James, you know I'm here because I love you. And I received so much from when we spoke alongside each other in the Global Summit last year and have followed on, launched a Tall Poppy's Rising Revolution at the beginning of April with my book. So absolutely know that I'm here to create a community of people who are willing to explore and dive deep into their compost from which they grow and actually stand up and own who they are and bring their gifts forward to support humanity moving forward. I'm also sitting as the secretary on the board of Heart Place Hospital, which is an organisation that's been set up by a reimagined nurse and beautiful friend who is caring for the carers and frontline health and education, but basically anybody that's caring for anybody is kind of included in that space. And given that we can't care for anybody else if we don't care for ourselves, and the system that we've got is sick and unsustainable, Heart Place Hospital is about bringing the healing the healers, right, and healing boundary wounds and all of that sort of stuff, so that we can support a sustainable health system through empowered healthcare workers. Anything else? No, I think that's it for now. Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah, just checking.
That's awesome. You seriously tap some. You guys are awesome. Like, you're tapping some massive issues, like, straight up. One of the biggest things at the moment is that the healthcare profession is based on sympathy, not empathy. What do I mean by that? An empath is able to tune in and understand what's going on with a person emotionally, energetically, but doesn't take it on as their own. The sympath tunes in, takes it on as their own. So they're the immature empath. If you want to see the best example of this, go to a beautiful nurse who joined at the age of 18 as a nurse. She had so much love in her heart. She just was there to help, to heal. And throughout a 25, 30-year career, when she became the matron, she became hard. She's generally overweight. Her health's run down. She's gone into a masculine. And that's a sympath, not an empath. Whereas an empath doesn't take on the energy of others. They have incredible energetic boundaries, and therefore they know what to do with that. This understanding that you don't have to take another person's pain to help them is actually possibly one of the most fundamental things we can do in any space as leaders. And I can't implore us to understand this as leaders even more. You probably, by just the three people talking, got an understanding of the caliber of person on this call. We've got some amazing people doing amazing things out there, and one of the things is sustainability it needs to die as a concept. My humble opinion, sustainability needs to die. Why? Think about sustainability. It's all about treading water. Nature does not sustain itself. Full stop. It's in harmony. It's in harmony no matter what you look at. Even if you've got a bunch of lantana there, you're not observing deep enough to see what the actual lantana is energetically doing. It's actually supplanting something which has been taken away, removed from the forest floor. And over a period of time, which generally we won't see, then what's going to happen is going to rebalance itself. It's just humans don't operate on that time scale generally with observation. So it's really, really important for us to know that. Let's jump now to the curious one. I take it that's you with your hand up, Lisa. Did I get that? There you go. You on?
Hey, stranger. Welcome to the Victorian winter. Regretting the move south, I'm sure. It's bloody freezing. Yeah, I'm the brain fireworks have already been set off about 5 minutes into this conversation already. There's a couple of points I wanted to sort of hit without sort of really understanding where you're at. Yes, I'm very curious about where you're at and what's going on and what it is that you're supporting the birth of, it feels like. Something pretty big and exciting. My pet sort of space is in the prevention space. I think there's a huge amount we can be doing in terms of mental health, suicide solutions, that sort of stuff. In the beforehand, I think the ambulances at the bottom of the cliff strategies have absolutely been tried, tested and failed over and over and over again. And as much as we still need to support those structures that are already in place, and absolutely what was last said about healing the healers and supporting the people that are doing that good work, I think there is huge opportunity on the other side of the coin in the how can we support people to, better regulate, set boundaries, all that sort of stuff ahead of time to avoid needing services that are currently only designed for crisis. You know, if we can prevent people from getting to crisis, then that would be ideal. And as has been mentioned, you know, the same big organisations get all the money every year in every federal budget, and every year the numbers don't change. So anything that is looking at these issues from a different perspective and coming at it from a different point of view, I'm all in with boots on. So yeah, really interested and excited for how I can potentially contribute or spread the word or yeah, get involved. So I'm very pleased to be here and to meet everybody, and you know, new networking is always fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Gorgeous. Ash just made actually, he just might be coming back on, actually. He just put a comment there that there, like in his experience, there wasn't that much to help a soldier. Um, and a lot of soldiers believe that. From a strategic point of view, having dealt in the particularly in defense at a strategic level on this topic, there is actually more services available to Australian service personnel than any other demographic in Australia that is specific for them. And that's both in the actual system and outside the system now. But as I said to a forum back in 2012, and I was talking to about 120 different external service providers. I said, your marketing is shit, because I knew of 10 of you. And I was the guy in charge of over 100 soldiers that would actually vector them to you. So if I knew of 10, what did my soldiers do? However, as Matt just mentioned, you know, the question I'm going to throw at the group, and I don't have the answer to this, is have we moved past that point where people do actually know there's something there, and there's something blocking them? And I know that having worked a lot with people, that is a significant issue, but we can't bypass that. There still may be an aspect of society which doesn't really know, and they don't know what they don't know. So, one of the things that I ask us to do today is really keep an open mind about all the different things. We're not just here for mental health, by the way. That's not just a mental health forum. We're here about society, because my humble opinion, just to have a look at mental health, you actually miss the whole thing. Why are a lot of Victorian farmers taking their own life right now? Because of Victorian government initiatives, specifically attacks. So people will say, no, that's an economic issue because the government's in, or supposedly the state's in a lot of debt. I don't understand that concept, but so the ineptitude of a series of politicians has put the state in a bit of a farce. So what do? Tax the very people that we request to assist us in the food bowl. But it's not just that as well. Have a look at, has farmers lost what the essence of what they're doing is? Have they lost connection to the land and to the produce in which they're producing? When I work with farmers, I actually ask them, the stuff going out your front gate, would you be willing to put it on your 4-year-old's plate? And quite regularly, I get a stunned mullet look. So it's not just farmers though, it's across the board. Why do people rush to the mines? There's an incredible FIFO social media advertising campaign at the moment. So it'll be very interesting to know if anyone's got any understanding of what the mines currently are as far as recruitment is. But that's an intriguing thing that they're doing, and watch their narratives with they're doing it. By the way, the mines are covering up the incredible rate of suicides that are out there at the moment. We know that. But again, this is what I think, it's a systemic issue. And that's one thing I really would like us to have a look at tonight is realizing that one thing does have a flow-on effect to other things, and undealt with, it has a compounding effect. But at the same time, you know, we don't have the Prime Minister on the phone. And in particular, I don't want him in here anyway. I don't believe that he's the solution. And I'm not making a judgment on person. I just don't believe that position is actually a solution in our current structure of society. So it may be in time, and that would be great if it was. But right now, the question is, you know, what can we do as a bunch of people? So keep that in the back of our mind. Probably got time for one more to put your hand up and tell us what objective you would like to have tonight. Hello, Big Noel. I love this man, by the way.
Hello, Big James. How are you going?
Good man.
That's good. I've come into here just to be informed, and no real, I don't know, no objective or just to be informed, just to listen and hear what everyone's got to say, and yeah, you sort of develop your opinions as you go along. Well, most of us have opinions before we get here, but we're here to be changed and looked at new ways, and I suppose the other thing is, yeah, just fed up with the bullshit that goes on with the news, and well, actually, I don't watch the news anyway, so it doesn't matter. But just the bullshit that goes on with companies and governments and councils and everything else. And yeah, I just think this is a good thing. I think we can make this work somehow. So, hey, my view.
Thanks, brother. I got a beautiful gift when I was I think I was 24 years of age as a young captain in when I got posted back to my home regiment in Darwin, the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And my boss turned to me and said, James, you've got to understand now, you are the defense or you are the army. So when a soldier complains about the army or about defense or about the regiment, it is you they're complaining about. And I looked at him and thought, that's a bit harsh, Like I'm a first year captain, I've just been promoted. It's like it's a big ticket. And then I started to realize what he was trying to get me to think about. He was trying to get me to understand what it is the soldiers go through at the coalface and how I play a part in that every time they move something up the chain of command, etc. And that became pivotal in my leadership style throughout the army and then throughout now when I do the work that I do, etc. So there's a number of you that don't actually know me, and that's probably a good thing for you. Otherwise, the psychological assistance throughout the world would probably have gone up, but that's okay. I'll just quickly give you a little bit of a snapshot so you understand. That's probably my favorite picture. That's a ziggurat of Ur, 6,500-year-old temple to the moon god Ur. Actually, the moon god Nana, sorry, at Ur. And that's my combat team Eagle, and that's me sitting front and center, standing front and center. So I was 17 years in the army for many different reasons. I've unpacked most of them. Hit by a roadside bomb on the 23rd of April. I needed the biggest kick in the balls to actually wake up to my priorities in life. And that's why I needed to be hit. I attracted it into my life, and it's now literally the 4th best day of my life because it helped recalibrate it. Now, I currently have peers that I went through my training with that are generals or chiefs of service. So that's the level that I was going towards and going at. And at that moment in time, my life got redirected to what I would call more purposeful vector. So the last 15 years, I've been running charities, running rites of passage, doing my own healing from post-traumatic stress, depression, and suicide. I didn't do it. I almost did. But coming back from that place, I've worked a lot with Indigenous peoples all around the world from many different tongues, many different philosophies. I've delved deep into the esoteric world to understand myself and my heritage. I've taken men bush for many times. I've operated at the strategic level within sporting codes and other government agencies, and I've mentored leadership right across the board. I only say that so you get an understanding that I'm not talking from some person who's just developed an opinion overnight. Yet I will caveat that by saying at times it is my opinion, and I, along with everyone, have or I actually love when someone calls me to action on it. I once briefed a bunch of 160 business owners in Western Sydney, it was actually last year, at a conference where they were looking into the building of the new city in West Sydney. And I said to them that who would agree with me that the last 4 years, the real pandemic has been the lack of critical thinking? Now, everyone put their hand up. And the funny thing about everyone putting their hand up was I then went straight back and I said, you know what? I would have actually really liked someone to disagree with me because then we'd actually have a dialogue and the two of us could actually move forward and understand a different point of view. But if everyone agrees, there's no increase in the point of view until we get obviously deeper into discussion. So what I want to do, and especially in the last 3 years, is we've been engaging heavily with communities, and I want to just take about 20 minutes to explain a concept of evaluation that we've seen. And this is not just in the mental health space, it's across the board in all things. It's in healthcare, it's in what I've seen in construction, mining, government agencies, etc. Australia is one of the highest government employing nations, particularly in the Western world. I believe we currently sit at around 28.9% government employment. And that's quite a fascinating, like huge, that's almost a third of our adult employment is into government. And that creates quite a interesting condition to think about. So to think not only about that, to go further and say, what are other aspects? Like I've also, in dealing with communities, assisted them develop governance architectures, including law, LORE, not LOW. You don't put a lawyer in charge of law, but excuse me, in the pun, but also energy circles and stuff. There is so much energy technology out there in the Australian wilderness, and I'll say the wilderness because most of these people with the tech are in the wilderness because of varying reasons, but it is waiting to be birthed into communities as well. There is, for every like issue in a community, I will guarantee there's someone somewhere with the actual solution. And what I've found over the last 3 years, part of my role has been to find out people's needs and to find out their gifts and match the two. And then step the hell out of the way and watch the solutions like just come out of the wazoo, like stuff you would never realize. There's a guy actually here. Where is he? This guy here, Sanchez. Um, Adam Reamers, he was a fascinating guy. He was probably the most junior of all my lieutenants. And the thing about him, though, and when we deployed his troop, his organization under me is probably the most immature. So I had to be careful about what tasks I gave them because we're still in the training process when we deployed. But by the end of the actual deployment, I gave him my entire combat team because he just had such a thirst for knowledge, a massive heart, and listened. And he realized that he might be the conductor as the leader, but by hell, everyone else was the musician. And he really created a great symphonic orchestra as part of his actual team. And just watching him, even though I was his senior by many years, just watching him, I really learned a lot just about how humility can actually be utilized in leadership roles, no matter what the environment. And that's it was a fairly touchy environment over there, but he did it so beautifully because he listened and he knew that he didn't always have the answer, but the answer was there if he listened. So it's something that I learned. What I've noticed though with the stifling issues that are on board are, firstly, a lot of these organisations are coming from the wound. Now, one of the great ones that I've used quite regularly is looking at the Daniel Morecambe case. Anyone who knows anything about that, that's a tragic case. Full stop. It's a real tragedy there. But the issue is, if we act when we're in the process of grief, then what happens is the wound perpetuates the creation of the future. I'll say that again. If we act when we're in the process of grief, the wound perpetuates the creation of the future. So in other words, we create from the wound. Now, so many organizations and charities, etc., have been set up from the wound. And it's problematic because they get very emotionally charged, which therefore quite regularly means they can't see more networked, broader. And they will often fight emotionally for survival based on the justification that there is a wound. And so therefore they actually need the wound to continue. I actually once mentioned to the RSL, perhaps you need to die and be reborn to actually an organization which could possibly help the contemporary veteran. That wasn't taken too nicely, but that doesn't matter. It's just seeding the thought. Competition. In 2019, we're organising a men's mental health day in the Sydney Town Hall. And the only reason why I was engaging it was because I came in under the premise that we were going to work to get all the leaders of men's mental health organisations in the run room to do a symposium. And I got so excited about that. So we went around trying to do it. And we found a number of the biggest charities would not be seen in the same room because of branding. And like, I just went, what the? When branding comes into it, you've lost the focus because branding equals bottom dollar for them. And for me, that's, I don't even bother like entertaining a conversation with the people, because what's actually happened is a lot of them have become poster hanging organizations, which means that they put the poster up, gain the money, and then there's nothing behind the poster. They sublet it out, etc. But again, I've said it on a couple of my videos, money is not the solution. It's a tool, but it's not the solution. And it's really quite pivotal to understand. But unfortunately, a lot of the charities, etc., and not only that, the movements, they start from a very survivalist mindset, which actually therefore means it becomes a dog eat dog world. Anyone who's been in the charity space would understand that. Even though I have a DGR1 national charity, I don't get involved in the charitable space. We don't operate with grants and things like that. We operate with direct heart-to-heart connection through philanthropists. So the other thing is, this is a term which, if in the woke world was used, uh, I get a lot of sledging. You got to call it as it is, in my humble opinion. I don't judge. I just acknowledge the fact that I've been in a victim mode. Now, I had to look so deep at my own victim, and it was absolutely hilarious. About 10 years ago, I was running a program. I decided it was one of the only times I was going to run a program just for veterans. And I even made discounts for veterans. I never make discounts, but some reason why I decreased I actually conflicted with my values. So I put this discounted program out there just for veterans, and no one signed up. No one was signing up. A week out, I'm just about to have to cancel the program. If I hadn't have run that program, I would have run something else. So, it was in financial impact and stuff like this on the family. But the point was, no one was, I was giving a gift horse to them, and I couldn't understand why they weren't signing up. So Kirsty sat me down on our chairs millionaires out on the actual deck, and the psychological couch, we used to call it. And she asked me these couple of questions, and she said, "So what are you seeing in these people?" I said, "They're just fucking victims." And she said, "Okay, put the mirror up." And I was being a victim myself. And it sent me in one of the about 2 weeks of deep, deep healing into my own victim. It was beautiful. And I never transgressed that value again. I don't make a discount for veterans, because veterans are beautiful people, as are everyone else. And everyone, in my humble opinion, is a veteran of something. That's just me. And in violating that code, I actually put that energy out into my program. So no wonder no one signed up. It made complete sense. And the other issue is, so many are starting from the fight. Now, there's a lot of you who here from varying communities, which have started for varying different reasons. And one of the questions we've got to ask ourselves is it from the fight? And Teresa, you mentioned how to unify. One of the key things that unifying leaders do is ask the unifying question. So what does that mean? The unifying question has to be outside the current level of argument, has to be above it, has to transcend it. So I'm always looking for, what question can I ask in this moment which elevates us out of the emotion of the argument to get us to the core issue underpinning the actual discussion. And that's, to me, that's called a unifying question that harmonic leaders actually ask. They always seek, and they ask that. They ask it of themselves, and they ask it of all their people and their team around it. But when we start from the fight, then what happens is that we bring that energy into it. That, again, that's the energy of creation. And interestingly enough, all fights start from fear. All fights start from fear. So what a lot of people will do is take them and say, we just need to knock them on the head. Well, if you do that, you miss the point. And there's this thing called the law of polarity. Some of you may have heard of it. It's anyone who's done my courses, and there's some of you on here that have. It states that all is the same, but to varying degrees. All opposites will be rectified over time. All paradoxes will be resolved, just not at that level. And basically, if we bring that into a psychological context, just imagine a pendulum. And this diagram will explain it. So the pendulum has on one side a value or an issue, and the other side will have the pole of the value of the issue. And they'll swing between the two. But this is the mental plane. And a lot of people will say that's where the power of the pendulum is, because it's where the energy is. And they'll talk about potential energy being highest here and actual energy being highest here. It's not where the power of the pendulum is at all. This apex point here is, because if you shift that, you shift the whole pendulum. So that's what I would refer to as the transcendent function, or the place where the heart-mind the heart-mind plane. They come together. Now, let me explain this in a little bit of detail. By the way, I'm actually condensing what is a detailed training into literally 5 minutes. So just work with me. And if you need to re-listen to this, please do. And take this tool into your very life. If you want to take it, please use it. You can never abuse it. So let's just look at one in motion. Sorry, I should also say that the shadow, every value will have a shadow and every pole will have a reflection. So let's look at one in thing. So trust. Lots of people will say, well, the opposite of trust is distrust. It's not actually. The opposite of trust is control. Because if I have high levels of trust, I'll have low levels of control. But if I need high levels of control, I'll have low levels of trust. So there's the poles in action. So a lot of people will say, yeah, I'm too controlling. I just need to trust more. But the issue is the next situation comes along and they'll go back to controlling. Why? Because they're just swinging on the pendulum. Yeah. And the other law, which is called the law of rhythm, says that everything will ebb and flow. Everything is in a perpetual state of motion. So let's take it deeper. What is the transcendent function? It's knowing. It's that deep, innate, intuitive, connective understanding of what is. And all of you will have been in a situation where you just knew what to do in that moment. That is the transcendent function. You didn't trust, you simply knew. Like, watch a mum with innate knowledge of how to be a mum. Like, I watched Kirsty with our two daughters, and for crying out loud, I reckon I learned more off leadership of that woman than I've learned off just about everything else I've done in over 30 years. Like, incredible innate knowledge. And it's the connective knowing that we have. If I have to trust, I'm out of the connected knowing space, because then control will also be in the back of my mind. But what's the shadow of trust? It's apathy, where a person says, oh yeah, no, I'm just trusting. Well, actually, no, you're just apathetic. You're sitting back. You're not trusting. You're trusting government, trusting the organization to look after me, etc. I said I was trusting of defence to look after me in many different respects. I never argued anything to do with my pay, because I thought that, oh, no, I trust defence. They know what they're doing. No, it's just that I was too apathetic to get off my ass and go down to pay cell and actually question them. Not only that, I did actually have issues with my own self-worth, and so I couldn't necessarily discuss pay. And that came to very big fruition when I got out of the military and actually had to tell people how much I'm worth if they wanted to actually come and look at me and have my services. So, with apathy, you simply, all you're doing is you're masking the bigger issue, and it will actually perpetuate. But if we flip to control, what's the reflection? Because control's actually calling us to something, and that the pole always will be calling us to something. And control's actually telling us, have a look at the structure or the form that's currently operating, because possibly it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, you're trusting on a whim. There's nothing there of substance to trust. Either you haven't resourced appropriately or you haven't trained, etc. The form is not there to actually assist the formless flow. It's like the riverbank flowing down, etc. So there's the key aspects to have a look at. And you see, I just knew that my daughter would be such an amazing person to bring me a cup of tea tonight, although it isn't a beautiful mum's mug. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So let's have a look at another one. And this particularly is with communities. So have a look at community. Then what's the opposite of that? In essence, it's the multinational organization or corporation, and say possibly using this term, the world government, that a lot of people will use. So in other words, you've gone from local to global. So what's the transcendent function? It's an eco network or a nexus, something which binds and bonds. But the shadow of community still exists, and that's a cult. If you actually think about it, you go down and cults become fanatical, and any shadow will often breed fanaticism. Any fanaticism is always in shadow, but shadow will often breed fanaticism. But there's an actual positive behind this architecture here, and that is mass amplification of purpose. And if they nail a truly heart-centered, humanitally orientated, like evolutionary initiative, jeepers creepers, that can have an incredible effect. Think of the head Fred Hollows Foundation, just for one. Many other organizations and things put their stuff out and create incredible impact in the world. Why? Because the design is to impact as many people as possible, and they do it from a place of beauty, a place of of realistically harmony. And that actually has a great effect for us. So this is not bad. It can be nefarious if the intention is wrong, or can't even say wrong, if the intention is in that kind, but so can this. So it's about what the intention and the energy we put into anything, and realizing that one's on the mental plane, and the when we actually elevate that to the heart mind, we actually develop what the purest of purpose is. Now, realistically, going back to those ones that I mentioned, the stifling issues, we can actually have a look at all of them, just through their reflections, their poles, etc. So the first one I would say is projection. There is so much projection out there and that's when I'm talking about the wound, etc. So what happens is a person who's projecting actually simply wants to be heard, seen, and validated. In other words, that validation is calling for self-realization. They're not, someone who's screaming to the world to be heard is actually not listening to themselves. And so the first thing they need to do is go still, silent, actually listen internally. And then what actually happens is they actually gain their power back. Evolution is the actual transcendent function. The pole is ownership and the shadow is martyrdom. So you can see projection and ownership are the two pendulums. You can see that the reflection of projection is actually wanting to be heard and that understanding of it. And for ownership, it does have a shadow, and that is martyrdom and masochism. And there are a lot of organizations out there. There's actually a lot of community leaders out there at the moment who have hit that point of exhaustion because they've started in the wound and they're actually martyrs. In other words, they have a deep need to be needed. They have a savior archetype, which has actually gone rogue, and they are literally exhausted. And the only thing keeping them going is external action. The issue is that they're doing the external action in a distraction for actually turning inward and actually helping themselves. Now, if they were to help themselves or get help to help themselves and actually heal their inner wound and then elevate their bandwidth to elevate their capacity, they would be able to reclaim their position as leaders and actually be so much more amazing work for people. So the very thing that they're avoiding is the very thing which empowers them to do even more work for other people. And if you're ever talking to a person like this, and I know some of you on the call might be, the point is that if you fall over, who takes your place? In leadership, like being a wartime leader taught me this. And back then, I didn't know that a third eye was a spiritual epicenter. I thought it was a bullet hole to the forehead, and that was a very, very likely thing for me. So my second in command needed to know how to do my job. Like competition, ego needed to go straight out the window because people's lives were at risk. And it made me see things so clearly. And it was like, I had a lot of egos in my combat team, but I addressed them directly and I said, I don't give a rat's ass about your ego right now, but if you go down, who's going to take your command? Look at your soldiers. You put yourself aside and actually do this for your soldiers. And it was a really big shift in the combat team and the way they actually trained and everything else like this and looked after themselves. It's quite pivotal. The next issue is disconnection. If you look at the three, if you want your issues with mental health, realistically, it's disconnection, it's directionless, and it's also powerlessness. They're the three issues. I'll talk about disconnection and powerlessness now. Disconnection is the reflection is detachment. What disconnection allows, if you truly sit in it, is a realization that you've become too enmeshed in a lot of things outside your control. And it's calling you actually to go to the Buddhist philosophy of detachment, which if you want to have a look at, just have a look at the Buddhist Four Noble Truths. And that allows for a person to detach from suffering, otherwise referred to as dukkha. It's very, very powerful. The actual transcendent function is oneness. It's calling for oneness and unity. Obviously, the pole is connection. However, a lot of people want connection not out of its purity, but out of a need. Not out of its purity, out of a need. There's three psychological core wounds. I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, and I fear that I don't belong, that I'll be rejected, which is all about belonging. Safety is not the core human need, belonging is. But the belonging only becomes a core need when you're not connected to something deeper than yourself. And that's actually when a person has an issue with rejection, it's a belonging issue. And you'll find a lot of people that are joining communities, they actually have a belonging issue. And so therefore their deep issue with connection is the thing that you're actually dealing with. And if as a community, you don't have some form of capacity to assist in the person's personal rectification or healing of that to help them evolve and therefore become a more mature asset to the actual community, it's something you possibly want to have a look at. And every community does that I've ever seen. They always have some healer of a plethora of modalities to be able to do that. Directionless or aimlessness, what the reflection is with that and what it's calling you to do is to actually realize that the knowing comes within you instead of constantly looking external. When I was at Horsham the other day, and some of you are here from Horsham, a question I asked them is like what the issue is. Now we spent half an hour going right into the really nasty bits of the issue that's sitting over there at Horsham. But then my next question was, how do you bring power back to Horsham? How do we as a community empower ourselves again? And that's calling no counselor, no police officer, no one else. It's calling no company, no charity. It's calling a community to actually know again that intuitive nature about what needs to happen. The transcendent function is inspiration. The pole is vision, but sometimes a person will sit with a vision, but it's actually a fantasy. And the fantasy is not grounded. Vision is deeply grounded. It's deeply connected. Fantasy is not. And fantasizing actually causes a lot of internal disruption as well because it goes to a lack of self-worth. The last one I want to deal with tonight is, before I move on from this concept, is the fight. And when you're having a look at communities, this is a really important thing. It doesn't matter how big a community is or whatever. And it doesn't matter what style of community, even online communities. I'm involved in a number of online communities, forums, etc., where we haven't actually met in person. The forming, norming, storming, and performing phases of group development are quite interesting when you don't meet in person. They take a different light and a different life. But a lot of you are in geographically bonded communities as well. So you will notice things like antagonism, etc., happen. Now, there's a beautiful man called M. Scott Peck. He wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled. For me, that should be mandatory text for any psychiatrist to read. It was a powerful book written in the 70s. He ran on to do, he's an American psychiatrist. He went on to do some fascinating work in communities, though. And one of the points he raises is a community that doesn't have anger in it will dissolve, it'll die. And to understand that, you have to understand that anger is an emotion of change. It calls us to change. Anger is a beautiful emotion. When truly understood and harnessed, it is an absolutely incredible emotion. There are so many organizations out there, and I've gone into construction companies and many other different things, and they have a zero tolerance for anger. And I immediately know they're a stagnated organization, and I can feel it in their people because the anger's sitting there. It's just been swept under it and it's coming now out as passive aggressiveness and a whole heap of other things, and sometimes just spraying out, but no one actually wants to comment about it. So M. Scott Peck would suggest that it doesn't matter if actually it's good that a community has anger, but a thriving community must have conflict resolution mechanisms. They must have conflict resolution mechanisms. Now, the work that I actually teach goes beyond conflict resolution to core issue identification and resolution. So instead of the conflict, because what so often happens, I don't go into any conflict management anymore. I believe it's a crock, because you get generally two victims pitching their tents and neither twain shall meet. Compromise is met, and with compromise comes resentment, and the issues just gets pushed away. I know that isn't a generalization. However, the generalization does actually hold in many, many cases. What I deal with is causal issue identification and resolution, where you go below to the actual core reason why the two individuals are actually in conflict, and you therefore come to a place not of compromise but of growth. So you transcend it, and it actually bonds as opposed to anything else. Fighting has a reflection, though. It's calling us for something, and that is quite regularly to stand up. Been involved with a lot of men that they get their knickers in a knot because of the family court, because of domestic violence. Always been talked about within the women's paradigm, and this is my whole point about domestic violence is not a woman's issue. It's not even a men's issue. It's actually a community issue, because it affects so many people across the board. So we can't just look at women. We can't just look at men. So it doesn't matter if 40% of domestic violence is against men. It's an irrational. Sorry, it's not an irrational statistic. It's almost a useless statistic, because the point is there's domestic violence out there, and so let's deal with that. Let's deal with the underlying currents and causes behind that, as opposed to attempting to divide within the one issue. And people say, no, we need to vector in at this and make a difference. There are beautiful people out there making incredible difference to individuals' lives. We will not change the situation until the core issues are dealt with, uprooted, healed, and evolved from, so that we can all learn and embody them in actual way we create ourselves as a thriving community. That's how it works. And yes, fighting is actually asking us to stand up. This man was saying, you know, my ex-wife, she just wants to take me to the cleaners. I'll just let her. Okay, mate. Then what's going to happen to you is you let her go, she takes you to the cleaners, you go down 10 years later, you'll be in another relationship, and guess what? You're going to actually be taken to the cleaners again because you have not stood up and actually healed your own internal wound. And it's not and that's the apathy coming in. He needed to stand up as a man and actually not be vindictive, not go for retribution, not go for revenge, but go for the true understanding of justice, which is the rebalancing of energy. So that's what the fighting is actually calling us to do. The transcendent function between the opposite pole, which is acceptance and fighting, is harmony, though. And harmony comes when you understand that energy must flow, and then it must go back to where it needs to. And the thing to do that with that is forgiveness, obviously. The thing about acceptance, though, there's so many people, and there's some beautiful techniques if you've ever done them called deep acceptance. It's very much a mindfulness slash almost Taoist type philosophy, which is really quite beautiful. The thing is, I watch a lot of people sit in acceptance. They're not sitting in acceptance, they're sitting in resignation. And resignation is built on resentment, and it means that the issues will not go away. So you see, what we're talking about when I say those issues that I mentioned before, if we simply try and go at the issue, we don't understand its core nature. Excuse me. When we do this analysis and we get a deeper understanding of what's going on and we remove judgment, we completely remove judgment from the situation, we can allow ourselves to actually come to a deeper level understanding, which is unifying the reason and the emotion. And that's a heart-mind function. And so what we're starting to look for is the fact that what we're looking is an evolving society which operates from unity through an inspiration and harmony. If you took those four things as your values of a community, and you set that, remember, values are meant to set a tone, a frequency of a culture, which is why it's hilarious for me to go into an organization, see the values painted on a wall, and then take 2 minutes to sit in a chair with a cuppa on the side and look around watching those values being completely disregarded or actually put into conflict. And I just chuckle to myself and go, we're going to have a bit of fun here. But the thing is, if they actually looked at those values and actually embedded them in their culture, then that sets the tone. I was working with a bunch of jewelry shops once, and family was one of their family and support was one of their beautiful values they had for them and their staff and their team. But the thing is, as I was talking to the operations manager, she just had to do some disciplinary action because what had happened is one of the staff members had taken something off a shelf and put it behind the counter and told the manager that she was going to pay it off over a couple of weeks. And that was against the organization's policy. And I said, oh, okay, why's that? And she says, well, you take that off the store, off the shelf, that's a product that we might have been able to sell. So I said, okay, so 2 minutes ago you were telling me family was a value. Now you're actually telling me that money's more of a value than family. She says, no, it's not. It's not even on our values. I said, yes, it is. Because you're telling your family that they can't be backed up and supported to pay something off over time because you need the money right away. She went, oh my God. After she picked her jaw up from the floor, she went, rang the CEO and immediately changed the policy because they weren't living their values. And that's simply because they didn't know. That's all it is. So often what we've got to understand is ignorance is actually ruling a lot of the roost. So I've just data dumped a lot at you for the last 20 minutes. I'll take questions from now from anyone, and then before we move on to the next part. Are there any questions? Do you know, as a presenter, there's a rule. If you have no questions, one of two things happen. You're such an amazing explainer that you've just presented your message so perfectly, no one has questions, or no one could be asking a question. I'm leaning towards the first one, obviously. Any questions? Yes, Sarah.
I would love to know, James, how you communicate in these situations. You talk about when communities are formed from the wound, and you're speaking, like, I'm not going to make assumptions, but given the caliber of what you teach and share and gift and service to the people you work with, that everyone on here is in the same ilk and wanting the same thing. So we have this awareness within ourselves, and we're building on that. How then can you initiate that in others?
Well, there's a
And
couple of
obviously,
questions.
hey,
The couple of questions immediately come to mind. Do people actually want that?
yeah,
In the forum I was out at Horsham with, there were a number of people that self-awareness was actually something they didn't want. Matter of fact, that they would, if you push them, they would come up with a series of stories generally. Initially, it will be a story which is a cover up, and they'll talk into the story. As soon as a person goes into a story, they have a personality which is using the story or the narrative as a distraction. So therefore, they need time. They need time to build trust to be able to go through the story to the actual point. Do they actually want to do that? So therefore, the question to them is the issue within themselves at such a level that it is now dysfunctioning at the community level? Is it bringing the community down because of this internal personal issue? If that's the case, then what I suggest is the person who's responsible within the community for this type of leadership spends some time with them and and listens, actively listens. And it's not counseling, it's sitting, looking together at the stars, trying to get an understanding of where this person's coming from. But what I do with communities is look at the bedrock first. So there's this thing that I teach, which is called the trilogy of three. I'll fire this at you, and please, like, Sarah, comment if you want this information, like, ask me again and I'll get it to you. And I'll even give you a memorandum of community understanding that I wrote for the communities that I was working with before, which actually summarizes this just in a different context. The trilogy of three is simple. I control three things in life: my thoughts, my words, my deeds. That's all I control. I don't control anyone else's. No one else controls mine either, unless at a subconscious level I agree to it. And why would that happen? Because there's an emotional need in some way, shape, or form that I haven't consciously acknowledged. So therefore, there's the next healing journey for myself. I control three things in life: my thoughts, my words, my deeds. Every action is to be done with respect, reverence, and responsibility. Respect, for if I'm not respecting another, who am I not truly respecting? And in the rites of passage, I would drum this into the young ones at, like, within 5 minutes of meeting them. By day two, we'd switch the language and we'd say, for me to respect myself, I must. And they know this. Like, an 11-year-old knows this. And I'll give them the answer in a nanosecond. But I walk down the main street of Seymour tomorrow. Actually, I won't do this. I'm just telling you categorically I'm not going to do this. But if I was to walk down the main street of Seymour tomorrow and see a 40-year-old and say that question, so if you're not respecting someone, mate, who are you not really respecting? I'll guarantee I'm probably not going to get the same response. Yeah. Duncan was there the other day. But anyway, the point is that we teach that to them at that thing. So respect is really, really pivotal. Then reverence, bring the sanctity back. Bring the sanctity, the sacredness back to the action in which we take. And that's looking at another person as a human being. Like that message that I got as that young captain, you are defense, James, you are the army, is saying to me that you're the human interface with this person, and this person is human. I once helped a guy get over PTSD. He was a New South Wales policeman as part of the TRG, Tactical Response Group. He was shot in the shoulder by New South Wales at the time most wanted criminal. Fascinating story. Gets his gun and his badge pulled off him in the psych ward and basically run out of town. calls up work cover and said, how's it going with that compensation claim for the guy who got shot on that date? And I said, there's no record of anyone getting shot on that date. He says, well, I'm telling you because I got the bullet wound in my bloody arm, so it was me. And he found out this big cover-up happened, so he took him to court. When I met him, he was in a lot of pain, and the reason why he was taking him to court was revenge. We first had to stop that, knowing full well that the court system was going to take a long time. That's cool. I had a bit of time to do the healing. He came to this place where he let go of the vengeance and he realized, okay, I actually do need to stand up. So he let go of the fight and he said, I do need to stand up. Why? Police officers are human beings and the system is treating them as robots. Now, interesting enough, by the way, Victorian Police in 2020, 66% of all Victorian police had a work cover claim in for post-traumatic stress on the job. And that was before the 4 years of shenanigans. So he stood up. Now, he actually went to the barrister of the police come in and he went to town on this guy, Brad. And he said, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement and you'll be given $250,000 and that's it, and stormed out. And Brad just gone, no. That's all he said. No. Got up and walked out. And in the end, he won a landmark case. And it was for him, it was not about the money. He was standing there going, we put our lives on the line doing what you ask us to do because we want to be of service and you must support us. And it was really, really amazing. When it happened to him, I tell you what, I was crying. It's just, you did the healing to the level that you could pull that off, mate. That's courage. Yeah, cool, taking bullets and bombs. That's there. Yeah, it's a different form. To stand there and truly go where you need to go and do the healing to be able to do that, you've just led against a system which is, I won't even go that far. I won't need the adjectives. So reverence is really, really important. And responsibility, he had the responsibility to actually go about himself, like look after himself, go into his healing, etc. Respect, reverence, and responsibility. All actions must be taken to that. All outcomes must be done with a win for you, a win for me, and a win for the divine, or the greater, or the community, or whatever thing you want to put there, but it must be transcendent from you and me. It takes us out of the human interaction to the collective. So it must be a win for the collective, whatever that is to you. If you abide by if you literally run your communities by the trilogy of three, it dissolves most things because it's actually about personal responsibility. Most issues in communities are because they're a bunch of people which have come together with societal narrative about what personal responsibility is, which is it doesn't exist. And so if you're creating a community from scratch, you've got to have a look at the bedrock you've got there. If you currently have a community organization, some of you have to actually have a look. Do your communities need to die? And that might actually be the case because the death needs to occur for the rebirth to occur. The snake needs to shed its skin, otherwise it will die. It's called the Ouroboros in mystical terms, the snake eating its own tail. You may have seen it before. And it is a beautiful process of death to bring forth what needs to actually happen. And I think in society, what we're getting to is a place now where there is a lot of death actually happening for the rebirths. And as I said, I had no qualms at all asking the RSL leadership, do you actually need to die for the creation of something more contemporarily relevant for the betterment of humanity? Why do you exist? Is it just for your own perpetual existence, or is it of service? And a lot of the time, communities in whatever function they've got, they're holding themselves together. They're really holding themselves together. I'm watching that with the church community here. Like, it's literally fascinating to watch. The modern church is actually dying, and I don't actually see any issue with that. It creates a vacuum, a void, which will be filled by some nefarious entities for a period of time, causing a lot of chaos. But from that chaos, everyone was born from chaos. And I'm not going to go into your 512 cellular divisions today about how you were a mush, and then finally one asshole, and then everything else happened. I did it again, didn't I? I went there. But anyway, righto. That was a bit. Did I actually give you anything then, Sarah? And please tell me if I didn't. Okay, awesome. Did everyone get something from that?
That was helpful. Thank you. But
anyone
because
else
you
with
speak
a question?
like a full on fire hose, James, by your own admission. That's what you said last year. I'll ask for the trilogy piece later because I couldn't write that fast.
I'll send you a slide if you want. Got it all on a slide. And I'll send you that document too. I just got to dig it up and find it. You might pick up that I actually don't believe in intellectual property. Why? Because my knowledge has come through contemplation, and my contemplation goes to higher forces than I. And if I was to say intellectual property exists in my world, I'm a very arrogant individual. So what is mine is yours. But the question I do ask you is what you do with it. I will gift it to you if you receive it with the appropriate energy. Understanding Indian giving is a fascinating thing. I was taught as a kid Indian givers were bad. Indian givers are the most sacred people going around. They understand energy. The whole premise behind it is I give you this. I give it to you for a reason with an energy. If you disrespect or you dishonor the energy for which I'm giving it to you, I will remove it from your presence, from your purpose, because you've dishonored this energy. Therefore, you've dishonored us. If when I give it to you, you no longer have need for it, please give it back, because then I can actually give it on to the next person who has it of need. I've got a blue chainsaw. That was my first chainsaw. Funny story behind a blue chainsaw, not going down it today, but I don't need it anymore. And so I give it to people as their first chainsaw when they come to me. And then I just ask that when they're ready to upgrade, they actually give it back so that I can pass it on to the next person. Just a constant thing that I do. Any other questions of anything I've just covered? Righto. So it's time for me to stop doing the talking and for us to start doing some work. Because as I said before, there's some incredible individuals doing some amazing things. I just want to acknowledge Felipe here. He's actually running an amazing organization called Mentoring Men. If you don't know about it, check it out. Go online, mentoringmen.com.
.org.au.
Sorry, .org.au.
No, thank you. Thank you.
So an amazing initiative that he's done. He's the CEO of the company, not company, the organization. So yeah, some amazing minds here. Yeah, with some beautiful initiatives. Sarah's already spoken about the communities, etc., that are happening around the place. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and we're going to break into some breakout rooms. And your mission in the breakout, oh, jeepers, I just said it, didn't I? So I've been out for 15 years, and sometimes I keep saying it. I just roll with me on this one, would you? So your objective when you go into these breakout rooms is to go through these questions. Now, some of you will think that you're sitting in a breakout room beyond your measure. I'm going to guarantee you're not. And that doesn't happen in the divine world. You are there for a specific reason. So please listen, be still, but also contribute in a considered way. So what I'm going to do, just work with me on this because I just got to get the breakout rooms up. There will be around 5 people in your breakout room, and I can't go there just yet. I've got to give you the questions because otherwise that would be hilarious and wouldn't really work. So that was that slide. By the way, the slide deck you can have as well if you want. Ash has raised his hand. Yeah, mate.
Yeah, so I've actually got to bounce. I've got to move on to family stuff. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for tonight. Absolutely fantastic. My first time in this kind of forum with you, so really, really appreciate it. You and I are going to connect now down in Victoria, so we'll freeze our nuts off together, and we'll definitely have that beer.
Awesome, mate.
All right, beautiful people.
Love you, mate.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for you. Righto. What was I doing? Okay, so I want to show you the questions. I just want to start by saying I believe that all issues on the planet can be solved at a community level within a global context. All issues on the planet can be solved at a community level within a global context. I want you to take that philosophy into these breakout rooms. So my question to you is, what issues are you currently seeing in your communities or organizations? It doesn't matter, or society as a general. Be careful of going too general Okay, but at the same time, offer specific examples. How do we regain power? Now, notice that question. I didn't ask for solutions. I asked, how do we regain power? Because if we regain power, the solution will present itself. Not only that, no matter what issue presents itself from then on, will be solvable. But if we simply go to a solution, then all we're doing is we're dealing piecemeal. I'm talking about creating a unified harmonic future. How do we regain power? For therefore, we evolve. We go through the wound to the lesson, and we actually take the lesson and we integrate that into our very being and our nature and our community and our leadership style and whatever. And how do we move that forward? How do we regain power? And what's the next step? And I challenge each one of you. I challenge each one of you to actually have a next step. I don't care how big or small it is, does not matter. But when you have a look at it, my challenge is this: just push yourself a little bit. Like go, yeah, that step, I'll just do this step, and that's within my comfort zone. I'm not going to go into a discussion what comfort gets us, but one of the reasons why the Western society is currently in the predicament we are in, it's because generations wanted to be comfortable. Comfort breeds apathy and decay. So have a look at those three questions. What issues do my community, society, or organizations face? How do we regain power? And what's our next step? So with that in mind, any questions before we break out? Nope. Awesome. And I'll just be pinging you when we'll be in there for about 10 minutes, and I'll give you about a 9-minute wrap up, and then we'll come back. Make sure you also appoint a spokesperson from your group, and they'll speak to it. Okay, you've just got to say, you've got to acknowledge and allow yourself to go through and join it.